Hello, Sarah, and good evening.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello. So first of all, I just want to thank you for kindly agreeing to share your in progress long COVID recovery story, which I'm sure will be relatable to many people who hopefully are watching this. So, perhaps you could start by introducing yourself and taking us back to where your story begins.
Yeah, great. Thanks. My name's Sarah. I'm from Melbourne in Australia. And I guess my story begins a little bit before I got COVID the first time, but that only something which I realized, later down the track. But look, I got infected the first time in January 2022. And in Melbourne, we had like some of the toughest lockdowns in the world. We had 2 years of really, really tight restrictions. And I pretty much got COVID almost immediately when we got out of lockdown in January. We'd only been out for a couple of months. Also, like during the lockdown, like my marriage had ended as well. So there was like at the time I caught it, like there was a lot going on. I'd sort of, moved into a new place during lockdown and just, a lot going on. So probably not surprising, I caught it and maybe what happened afterwards. Um, I I was pretty sick. I stayed at home. I was isolating at home on my own, and I was pretty sick for a couple of weeks. I immediately, like my main symptom, which is sort of carried through, was chest pain. I sort of felt, I know other people have said they felt like they had like an elephant on their chest. It was that sort of feeling, a lot of headaches, fever, the fatigue, etc. Um, and I was pretty unwell for like a couple of weeks. Slowly sort of came out of it. Um, and then, I mean, well, I'm going to skip around a bit, I suppose. I think probably for the first 2 years of having long COVID, I sort of just went on a yo-yo. In those first 6 months when I just wasn't really getting better. And like again in Australia, I think in the UK you were probably ahead of us, 12 months
Mm.
ahead of us with infections and getting long COVID and seeing people who weren't recovering. And so I really didn't, there was like there was no one I had who was sort of, I could relate to. And, I really couldn't put two and two together in terms of my health. I just thought, I've got a lot on. One of the first things actually that I heard, and this is where I first came across you, was I came across Jackie Baxter's podcast.
Mm.
And
Great
that was
podcast.
like, yeah, it was awesome. And that was like, I can literally remember being in bed and hearing her. And it was just, oh my God, it just made such a huge difference to me. I was just sort of thought, oh, this sounds like me, something I could relate to. And before I got sick, like I did a lot of exercise. I did a lot of running. Went to the gym a couple of times a week, or did pump classes, and it was like I thought it was my stress relief. It was
Mm.
like flog yourself as hard as possible, and so I couldn't get back to any sort of exercise. Certainly not in those first 6 or 7 months. Yeah, so I was still working, just sort of pushing through. Then took my kids on a skiing trip, skied for about 5 days, and then came home and just had a massive crash. Sort of, bedbound. I lost my voice for weeks and weeks. I had this cough for months I couldn't get rid of, and that was when I really thought, oh, okay. Um, and then look, to be honest, we don't maybe need all the details, but I sort of went for another year pretty much of this sort of thing. Like I was working and then I'd take a bit of time off work. At the same time, round about the same time too, actually, the job that I'd done for 15 years was restructured. So that also was no longer like viable for me. Um, so I sort of had it all going on, and
Yeah.
I was trying to really find out and try and deal with my symptoms, but for that first couple of years, I was just sort of doing it part time and I was just hoping it was going to get better, and it didn't.
Yeah. I can definitely relate a lot to what you're saying there around the just kind of hoping and waiting and just thinking, like, surely it's just you're gonna wake up one day and
Yeah.
it's all be over.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and you mentioned obviously being further behind sort of Europe and the UK, but um, but even when I first got sick, it was relatively early in 2021,
Yeah.
and there still wasn't that much known about it, and so I felt like actually I was in a quite similar position to where you
Yeah.
were. Um, but and then it was, people like say Jackie. I'll drop her link to her
Mm.
podcast in the show notes. Um, and people like Susie Bolt's yoga program like started to create these kind of communities where you felt
Yeah.
like you weren't alone.
Yep.
Just so vital. The first time we met face to face, obviously we
Mm.
were chatting in our app we use. But look, you seem like a wise woman with a headstrong. But I'm intrigued, like, how did you cope with, what were your coping mechanisms, if you had any, during that time? You obviously had a lot of, you know, stuff going on in your personal life. You had your
Yeah.
physical health.
Yeah.
Um, I was just intrigued at how you cope, or did you cope?
Oh, it's a really good question because, um, like I said, for me, exercise had always been my number one coping mechanism, and that was gone. Like it was totally gone. I couldn't do any of it. Um, I don't, do you know, I'll be really honest. I think in a way, the fact that like everything went at once, like sort of my personal life, my health and my job, in a weird way, it sort of helped because it was like, I was sort of a bit like I was pushed into like this really like radical acceptance because it was like all of these things are not what I thought they'd be. And, so I didn't look, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. I feel, I had a lot of support around me. Like, I've got really good friends and my family, and I think that was really important. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. I do think, all the way through, I've just tried to stay positive the whole time. And I think one of the things I did like really work out in the first year, even though I was sort of flailing, I really realized that my nervous system had been shot for a long time. So for me, like that was the main thing I focused on in those first couple of years was, like learning tools to regulate my nervous system, even if I wasn't feeling like I was necessarily getting on top of my symptoms.
Yeah.
And that has been like that's my probably feels like my biggest achievement so far because I feel like that's really, really helped me cope actually. And, and, and I have to say, like, I've never in the last couple of decades been as calm and regulated as I am now, despite it all.
It's amazing. It's incredible. It's like one of those blessings in disguise that I think come out of this. I'm sure you could probably reel off many more. I can, but I definitely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Um, did you, you said that you just recognized in yourself quite early on that it was your nervous system was
Yeah.
dysregulated.
Mm.
You, and obviously trying to address that, but did you do any formal kind of, programs with that, or was it just something that you did on your own and use certain techniques that you kind of leaned into?
So look, I went on in that first year. I went on a retreat up in northern Queensland in Australia, and that was where I got, and I just was able to just stop and do nothing for 5 days, and that was where I had some practitioners there who were like showing us some of the tools and just talking about what state and it was basically the sympathetic and parasympathetic stuff and
Mm-hmm.
how do you get into those states. And I feel like, like at that stage, like I was a 50-year-old woman. It's sort of like you feel like a bit embarrassed that you haven't got, you feel like, oh, I should have maybe sorted this out at some point. And And I just had this like revelation when I was there because I got into that deep parasympathetic state and it was like, holy cow,
Mm.
and that was it for me. That was like this revelation, like, okay, you can, if you've got the tools and you can start doing things, you can get there. It's not
Yeah.
perfect. It's not all the time. I've got teenage kids. It's like, there's always stuff going on, but that was a start for me. And then I suppose, and since then, I've really got into things like yoga nidra. I really like somatic tracking. I find those really good for managing symptoms. I'm also doing, this is a plug for Jackie again. I'm doing Jackie's long COVID breathing course. I'm actually just towards
Great.
the end of that now. So
Yeah.
yeah, and these are
Oh,
things
that's
that I
awesome.
really, yeah, it is. And so I do feel now like I really can access that sort of state, which was
Yeah.
something I did not even know about. Um,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
you know the words, don't you? But you don't really understand what that means and
no
how that feels
idea.
physically.
Yeah,
You mentioned Jackie's brief class. So for anyone
yeah,
watching, I had Jackie on my channel maybe a month or two ago now, and
yeah,
she was sharing her story. And at the end, she provided a really lovely gentle breath session.
yeah,
And it was amazing. So go check that out if anyone's watching this.
yeah,
Um, yeah, you'll enjoy that. She's actually fantastic.
yeah, yeah. That is awesome.
Um, yeah, I'm going to pick up what you said there about having a sign that it's your nervous system. Obviously, you were fortunate enough to go on a retreat. I remember
Mm,
when I got work, similar to you, I was trying to muddle through and work for a while, and I just wasn't getting better. And finally, when I made that decision to stop working,
mm,
I gave myself that space to try and heal. But the first thing we did was just go away for a couple of weeks.
mm,
It was horrendous getting there, like crashing to the airport, etc. Once we got into a new environment, my I was
yeah,
the best I felt for 9 months. And
yeah,
when we got home and travelled again and kind of went back to
yeah,
where I was, but it
yep,
was a sign, and it was like
exactly.
coincidence because I wasn't expecting it. You maybe were expecting it when you went on your
Mm,
retreat, but it was like, okay, that's the evidence now. How do I
mm,
tap in for this? And I'd encourage people who maybe have heard about mind body healing or nervous system regulation to kind of look for those, because they're just clues and they give you a bit of hope.
yeah,
Start to give that space to think, okay, maybe I can heal, maybe I can tap into this a bit more, this a bit more, and find
yeah,
the things that work for you. Like you like the somatic tracking,
yeah.
and then you go.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it hasn't been the full answer for me at this stage. Like I've still got symptoms and still dealing with issues, but I guess I think about it like a bottom up thing. Like for me, like, where my nervous system is at, sleep, things like that. They're like the things that I'm trying to really deal with,
Mm.
at a foundation level. Um, and I actually did also just like 4 months ago in August, I decided to take 12 months off work and I'd started a new job by then and just, it was that great job, but I was just slowly still like declining as I went back to work. So I thought, okay, I'll just bite the bullet. I took the 12 months off. And literally the day I told my boss, who was great, but the day I told him, I went home and I tested positive for COVID. So it was the start of my 12 months off and it was my
Right.
first infection since the original infection. Um, and then I sort of dealt with that for about a month, and then I unexpectedly had to move house. So I was like, and this is just that thing, right, about life. Like life, even when you're trying to do your recovery, whatever situation you're in, and I was sort of thinking, oh my God, I've got this time and it's going to be fantastic. I'm really going to focus on my recovery. And
Yeah.
like my first 2 months were just wiped out. And I just feel like again, I feel really lucky because I'd just done that work on my nervous system. I was like, I didn't, even though it did like physically impact me quite a bit, could stay calm through it. I didn't sort of freak out. I didn't, and I got through it. So I feel like that was really good that I'd done that work beforehand. But
Yeah. you say I can relate to, so I'm just gonna
Yeah,
like
yeah.
keep thinking, like, oh, I can,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm sure everyone watching can relate as well with their own
Mm,
own comparisons.
mm,
So you mentioned that you're not fully recovered, so I'm
mm.
really curious to understand where you're at currently,
Yep.
what's sort of presenting to you, like how you describe that, because the purpose of doing this specific interview was I really wanted to like help people that are still on this journey, show them that, it's great that more and more full recovery stories are coming out,
Yeah.
but actually sometimes they can feel a bit difficult for people that are still really fighting this.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be more helpful to talk to people that are still on that journey. They're maybe on the
Yeah.
recovery path, but they are still very much on that journey.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So I reckon I'm sort of around 70%, fluctuates a bit. Um, but I'm not working at the moment, right? So I've still got to deal with that, at some point down the track about going back to work. My main symptoms, I still have chest pain. And I can still get fatigue, but I'm pretty good. Like my energies, I can sort of function pretty well. It's really like the PEM chest pain. And if I get run down, I sort of always feel like I'm getting cold and fluey. And I've sort of got the histamine stuff going on as well. Um, and I guess I haven't really talked about this, but I've done all the things that I guess everyone has tried, the supplements, acupuncture, had all the tests, done various things. I've really simplified all of that because I just want to bring it back to basics and sort of start, like I said, with that foundation. So that's sort of where I'm at. And that's why I guess when I saw, your program, it was just like, it just seemed like a perfect time for me because it was sort of that stage where, I want to start doing a little bit more and I don't know if testing my body is the right word, but I want to start. I know I can't like go back to the exercise I used to. I don't know if I ever will. I'm at peace with that. That's not really my main concern right now, but I want to feel strong again. And I want to feel that I can get to a better place. So, um, and I did try like an exercise physiologist here. That was where I sort of started to think about, getting some support. And she was great. Like she was great because she got it. Like there was no gaslighting. She was really good. But she sort of gave me like 5 really basic things to do. And that's right. I know I've got to start at the bottom and everything. But it was just sort of like go away and do these and come back in, I don't know, 4 or 6 weeks. And I just sort of felt really, I don't know, it just made me feel really flat,
Mm-hmm.
And when I sort of saw what you were doing, I just thought, oh, wow, it just has got a really different feel. And there is that sort of community um, feel to it. So, yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at. I feel, I think a lot of people maybe day to day look at me and think, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, which is a different challenge, that I think we've all had at different times. But I'm just in that bit where I'm sort of like ready to like jump off a little bit, but still pretty scared, about what that's going to look like. But, also like really hoping it's all going to go
Yeah.
well. And that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It feels like there comes a point in recovery, and I certainly felt this too, where you just intuitively know that you're just building that resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so, and you start to, things start to become a bit more predictable, not
Yeah.
always. And that's where that kind of confidence starts to come back. And that is also like really important aspect of the baseline program, which you're talking about. How do we provide that appropriate exposure at a level that allows you to perform it consistently so that you can be really confident that you're not going to exert yourself and trigger any crashes, and then bit by bit,
Mm,
a little bit more. It's so slow.
mm,
So it's like, yes, we all
mm,
experience that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
experienced it
totally.
last week still. Like
Yeah,
I had a virus of some sort, and I was chatting before we hit record, and first called up my like virtual GP. I spoke to them. I kind of knew what it was. Unfortunately, a secondary infection, like happened a few times since
yeah,
last year or so, and it's just a residual thing I think from my long COVID where I just struggle
yeah,
to fight off. Fortunately, I've had to antibiotics each time. I knew it was the same thing. I just felt the same. I know my
yeah,
body.
yeah.
And I got on the phone. I was trying to explain this, and the doctor said to me, and like she didn't mean to tell me, of course, but she was like, "So have you had a diagnosis for long COVID?"
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I don't want to sit here and explain
No, 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 no.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a really unique thing that I guess though we all share, don't we? About and I find it, it's not just with like doctors too. It's just with people that you come across, who are asked, and who've, well-meaning and stuff, but
yeah,
it's a really hard part of dealing with it, isn't it?
it is, and I think it comes back
Mm,
to that acceptance, which is
totally.
hard. Like
Yeah,
acceptance has many layers, and some things are easier to accept than others.
yeah,
But yeah, it comes back to that acceptance. It's
yeah,
even harder when it's closer people to you, obviously.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you have to try and put yourself in their shoes and realize they
yeah.
don't know. No one
No,
knows
no.
what you're going through or what it feels like unless someone else has
Yeah,
it. And
that's right.
when you put yourself in their shoes, then you can understand.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So moving on slightly. So other than the working with the physio prior to joining the baseline club, had you kind of experimented with any other kind of sort of deliberate movement? Made any? I might use the word mistakes so much anymore. It's like, but like,
Yeah.
there's no mistakes, it's lessons learned as we navigate this. But I'm just intrigued what your experience was. I know you mentioned about skiing, and that obviously
Yeah. So that
was
was
not great at the
that.
time.
No, that was like a really big fail. Do you know what? I think I really just knew that my body couldn't. Well, I knew that my body could not do what I was used to doing. And so, like, for like, there's a lot of grief in that,
Mm.
about letting go of who you were, and it's part of your identity. And so I guess, I sort of I knew on the one hand, I knew I couldn't do it. And so I didn't like just keep doing it. I basically what I did for the first 2 years, if I could do anything, was, just walk my dog. That was it. I did a little bit of yoga, but I just always felt like I didn't have like a structure for doing anything. I always just felt like, and then I'd hear something about pacing and then I'd freak out. And then I'd hear something about someone saying, "Oh, you shouldn't go above this heart rate. You should be monitoring your heart rate." And all of that actually freaked me out. I was like, I can't,
Yes.
I didn't want to go down that route either. And I was clearly like failing, failing, I clearly was still going up and down and up and down. Um, so I was just like, a fish flapping around out of water, basically. It's what I was doing. But I knew I could not, like, for example, I knew I could not just go for a run and sort of like
Yeah.
push through. I was like, yeah, that is
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Well, you're a wiser woman than me because I was definitely flipping more than you did. Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. I Yeah, and I know many people have as well. But like, and unlike you, I massively felt like I lost my identity, and I pushed
Mm,
against that so
yeah,
for
it's
far
hard.
too long.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, just this, little bit of lies or something. It's fine.
Mm, mm,
Just keep pushing that, pushing, and
mm,
eventually I got to the point where I had to be like, and then it became like you kind of mentioned earlier, it became less about you know being able to exercise again. Actually, you know what? If I could just get better,
exactly.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
If I can have some
Yeah.
quality of life back, I'll take that
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
I guess important
Yeah.
until until, and this is like another like revelation start to have until you then do start to recover and you
Yeah.
start to hope,
Yeah.
and then be like, maybe I will be able to exercise again to some degree. And as that kind of goes on and on, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I will be able to train like I used to.
Yeah. Right. So,
It is that radical
yeah.
acceptance you mentioned earlier at the start,
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah. And it's scary, right? Because you've still got symptoms. Like I still have some symptoms. And then it's like, you can really overthink it too, I think,
Mm.
and think, okay, well, does this symptom mean I should be doing nothing? Like that I should be completely resting? Or is this symptom something that I can start moving through? Um, I don't know. And then it just sort of becomes a bit of trial and error. But again, like I think when you're doing it on your own, you just sort of feel like, oh, I don't know how I'm tracking. I don't know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that structure is important, that, and there's a safety in knowing you've got that structure, you've got someone coaching you, or there's
yeah,
other people doing sorts of proven kind of program, which is part of the reason that program that you're working on now inside the Baseline Club is the exact one that I created when I was at kind of your point of recovery, really, probably.
yeah, right.
Um, to I guess the goals initially for me were to keep my body healthy as I continue to heal, like
Yeah,
try to keep more mobile, start to reactivate those muscles a little bit,
yeah,
and then to very gradually build back tolerance. But there's a very
mm,
clear structure around it, and I think
mm,
really conscious of maintaining that to give people that sort of sense of safety, which is so important for the nervous system as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Cool. So, um, moving on a little bit more, I'm really keen to hear from you.
Mm.
You touched on this already, but what are your biggest lessons to date through your experience?
Oh, look, it's definitely around um my mindset, really. It's definitely around that, like I keep coming back to this space that I now have. Like I am not where I want to be right now. Like, pretty much all aspects of my life. Like I'm not where I want to be right now. But I'm sort of like I'm not necessarily fighting that, and I've got a sense of peace that despite that. Um, so that's been the big lesson because I would not be here if I hadn't got sick. I know what I would still be doing. I'd still be working full time and blah blah blah. And every time, and my body was sending me messages. I know that, and I can see that now in the lead up. In the year or two before getting sick, it was sending me some pretty big messages, and my response to all of that was basically to flog myself a bit harder. So that has been it. And it's about really being a lot kinder to myself. Um, and yeah, that sort of sense of peace I have despite like where I'm currently at. That's the best thing.
Okay, so just a couple more questions before we close this off. First of all, is there anything else you would like to share about your recovery or your experience with movement?
I suppose in recovery, like as I sort of said before, I really had decided that I would simplify a lot of things. So because I was really getting overwhelmed by trialing different things at once. And I think there's a real tendency when you're first dealing with it, or, even after dealing with it for a while, to just keep trying different things. Like I was doing all of it at once, like the supplements, acupuncture, I was doing saunas and cold plunges, all of these different things. And I had no idea. Like I just thought I'm sort of not getting that much better and I don't know what to drop or when to drop it or whatever. So, I just went right, as I said, back to the basics. Um, and again, like just talking about Jackie again, like one of the things I really like that she keeps saying, I know just recently, like in a class this week, it's just this thing about like she keeps saying about just for now, like it's just for now. So like just coming to terms with, it doesn't always necessarily have to be like this. And so just sort of like, again, it all comes back, I guess, to me just feeling like I've, just trying to, make things a bit calmer as much as I can. Um, with my body. Um, I've also been to a couple of long COVID, I've been through all the doctors and long COVID clinics, and I've had, different recommendations about trialing different types of medications and stuff. And again, that's a very personal decision for everyone, isn't it? But again, I just get pretty overwhelmed by thinking, oh, well, take this and then take this and then do this and do everything at once. I think that's a real challenge for us. It's hard. It's really hard. So I think that's been one of the really difficult things about and we've all had to become our experts at everything, and that's why what you've done and other people have done is so positive and helpful. So yeah, that's probably just the main thing from where I'm at the moment. I suppose with what I really love about the baseline program, we sort of touched about this. It just felt like, and you said some at the stage in a message, I think you said, trust the process. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because it's like, this is going back to that saying about all this overwhelm. And it's just like, God, I just want, there is this comfort in like thinking, okay, there's a process here. And the other thing you said, I remember too, is like, you do, or in your program, it's like you do your baseline and then you go back a level. Like you start wherever you think you are, you start at a lower level. And at first I wasn't going to do that. Like I was like, oh yeah. Like I think I'm at level 2, but I'm not going to start at level 1. Like, and of course, and then, I said, okay. And I said, no, trust the process, do it. And yeah, that is exactly where I should be at level 1. I'm still in level 1, right? But there's this real sense of comfort in doing it, in knowing that there is this structure. And obviously there's a really nice community of people encouraging you all along, which is great. For me, I'm just doing at the moment, like I think, it takes me about 10 to 12 minutes to do my little workout, which I would have laughed at 3 years ago. I would have absolutely laughed at it, but it feels really nice to just be moving my body in different ways. I love it. And I actually think, when you're doing it like that, it's actually really mindful. It's really mindful movement. And I can sort of see a pathway for getting stronger. And that's like my priority now. It's like, and I'm, a woman of a certain age, let's say, and, like strength is really important. Like if I wanted to achieve something, it's strength. So yeah, I do. I just feel like I've got this little cocoon of help, I suppose, that I haven't, it's like not something, it's not easy to find on this journey. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I'm so grateful and have you in the community, and also just so pleased that feeling that way.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the first time we spoke face to face, because
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
I do coaching in the app, but we have an app for all of the program and the courses. But it's so lovely to hear that. So thank you. Okay. Just a last question. Any final words of wisdom or advice for anyone listening before we close it off?
Yeah, it's hard to think about advice when you're still going through it. I mean, I think I've given you my sort of main theme. I just think as much as possible, it's just to try and focus your energy on the positives, because the negatives just is so overwhelming at times. I know that sounds sort of like a cliche, but it's just, to me, been the most important thing. And I love to have a laugh. And I really do. And even if it is just to catch up with friends or whatever and laugh, and, that's what gives me my little boosts of energy and has all along. So, just those glimmers. It's just about finding those glimmers as you're going through
You're
it.
saying there about laughing. I literally yesterday discovered Australia's finest, Celeste Barber.
Oh my God. Yeah, she's awesome. Celeste is great.
I was cracking up. She's got I was watching her Netflix show, a stand-up show. So anyone watching this who wants to laugh, that will get kind of Aussie humour, sort of English humour. I guess it's quite similar. Yeah, you don't mind a bit crudeness occasionally.
No.
Her Instagram,
she's
as well,
tame,
hilarious. The parodies she does. So
very funny. Yeah.
Needing a laugh, go check out Celeste Barber. She was brilliant.
Good one.
Cool. So look, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story today. I think, as I said at the start, I know it's going to be really relatable for a lot of people that are still on this healing journey. So I really appreciate you, and I'm also really grateful, so honoured that you put your trust in me
Oh,
to
my
help
pleasure.
you with part of your journey.
My pleasure, mate. And thank you for what you've done because, I'm sure it's made it that there are lots of other people that you're, influencing and impacting the same way. So it's awesome. Well done.
Thank you.